Welcome to Women's Sports Weekly, where women's sports happens every day, but we talk about it once a week. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Carolyn. Women's Sports Weekly is a podcast where we discuss the latest news, explore interesting stories, and share our love for women's sports. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Follow us and rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The winner of the holiday giveaway will be announced today on our Instagram. Head over to at Women's Sports Weekly Pod to find out if you won. And everyone watches Women's Sports t-shirt. And it's so good that you're wearing
Look at
the
that
t-shirt right now. We are into 2025.
Hard to believe this year actually flew. I feel like I've been saying that the past couple of years, but this year somehow felt faster.
My mom says that as you get older, the years go faster.
Well,
I never believed her, and now that I'm old, I believe it.
Yeah, I guess we're getting old.
Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Not super into resolutions. I try to stay pretty committed to things throughout the year, but I did think of some things I want to improve on this year. A lot of them have to do with fitness, which I hate to admit, but just to keep myself healthy, I want to get better at cross training, which usually includes the bike, and I want to increase my lifting from 1 time a week to 2 times a week. And this is strictly to help with strength and mobility to stay healthy. And then the last couple years, I always want to stay reading, continue to read books. So that continuously just is on my radar of things I want to continue to do year over year. How about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty anti-resolution as well. My yoga perspective is going to come in. I don't think January is a good time to start doing new things in the dead of winter. Winter's all about rest and reflection. I do think, though, this time is a really great time to reflect. I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I just really want to step into my authenticity a little bit more, be more unapologetically me. And this podcast is a great way to do that. And it's a great test to see if I'm actually doing that as well.
Yeah. For sure.
You're also planning some marathons this year, and this past week you have signed up for 2, but can you tell us how far apart those 2 marathons are from each other?
2 marathons in 2 weeks. In May, I hope to run the Colorado Marathon in Fort Collins, and then in the middle of May, I signed up for the Colfax Marathon, which I've done before, which is right here in Denver. I kind of put this out into the ether even before I ran Philly. I don't know why. It's just something I want to do, so I figured why not just go for it.
Can you talk a little bit about why maybe you feel like this pressure to get these marathons in?
I don't know. I just feel like, I don't know. I think part of it's living in Colorado. A lot of people do these amazing things. I know I can run 1 marathon at a certain point in time, but why can't I try to stack 2 within the same month? Part of me worries that when we have kids, I am not going to be able to run anymore, which I know is not accurate and not a smart thing to think, but it's just me going down a spiral. I was like, well, might as well run 2 more before that time comes.
So this is not a pregnancy announcement by any means. But
No, yeah, not to make people think we're pregnant. But before we even try to get pregnant, I don't know. It's just something I want to do.
Danielle has this really big fear that life is over when we have kids.
So do you.
Yes. And I know my sister is going to respond to this and be like, your life is over. And I know that. I'm going to look into the camera and say, I know our life is over. The life that we know
it
is over. But I know plenty of people who continue to set goals, individual goals for themselves, and continue to crush. And I can feel you pressing like we must get X, Y, and Z done before kiddos start coming out.
I know. It seems dumb.
It doesn't seem dumb.
But yeah, part of me is just like, I just want to do it and see if I can do it and stay healthy.
I think you can do it. I'm never going to doubt you. Yes. And it's going to be fun.
We'll see how good I feel when marathon number 2 of the month comes up and the night before I'm having a panic attack.
Yeah. You don't look great after your marathons.
I thought Philly, I looked pretty good.
Moments after, you look great. You look the greatest I've ever seen you. But the days after...
Ooh, yeah, it was rough.
Yeah. There's a lot of stilt walking. It's a little rough. I have no doubt that you can do it. I just don't know how great you're going to feel.
Yeah. And to be fair, I won't race both, right? There's a difference between going out there and racing a marathon and going out there and just having fun with it. And I want to race the first one and then go out at Colfax. Denver has a huge running community and just take it all in and just have fun with it on that day. It's definitely going to be a challenge and something I'm looking forward to seeing how I can handle it.
For sure. We are coming up also on, we do have a kid. The kid is this podcast, and this kid is turning a year old very soon.
Scout, how do you feel about that?
Our dog is also here. She's our other kid. We've had her for close to 5 years. But this baby that we've created, Women's Sports Weekly, is turning 1. So what are your overall feelings about that?
It's hard to believe. I thought this year flew, and the fact that we've been doing this podcast for a year kind of blows my mind. I think when you initially shared the idea with me of like, hey, do you want to start a podcast? I was just kind of like, what is this? Where are you going with this? I had no idea the direction it would take or the people it would bring us to, and that's been really cool. I think coming up on a year just makes me more excited about what we could potentially do in future years.
I also have to say the first year, like the biggest thing I can take away is the people that we've met through doing the podcast. It is so incredibly cool. And now we have new friends because of it. You and I often talk about like, how do we get more involved in our community? How do we get more involved specifically in the LGBTQ plus community? And this podcast has really allowed us to do that. And it gives me a lot of self-worth. So that's been really nice. We have a ton of goals for this year. I think mostly what we want to do is continue to grow, and you all help us by doing that and listening every week and by participating in our giveaways and by sharing with people who you think might be interested. We have some ideas of like how we could specifically grow with additional funds. So we're going to be looking more actively for sponsorships this year. We're really hoping to grow our following beyond 1,000 people. That's kind of like a growth spot that we're looking at. Part of me doesn't want to share my goals because I'm afraid that if we don't hit them, then it will be viewed as some type of failure. But I do think it's really important to name our goals. And I think putting them out into the universe is helpful in a woo-woo way.
Yeah. I'm going to make this about me now.
Good.
I can relate this to running because similarly, I was scared to share certain goals. I get weird about it. And you were like, no, you should share those goals. And I think the same goes for the pod. And you always tell me, if you don't reach said goal, does that mean you're a failure? And the answer is always no.
Yep.
So even if we weren't to reach every single goal, that shouldn't be viewed as a negative. Goals are set to either be reached or not be reached. And I don't think either is negative. It's just kind of a baseline structure of what we're following to reach overall goals down the line.
Yeah, and it gives purpose, right? I can honestly say doing this podcast has opened up like a whole new level of creativity in me. I never knew that I had any interest in editing and making things sound good, and I do. I love doing research, which I always knew. And so the opportunity to do that in something that I'm super interested in has just been really, really cool.
Yeah, for sure. You're definitely creative. I don't know why you thought you weren't.
I'm not like paint a pretty picture creative.
Well, there's different meanings for being creative.
But I'm also not like play an instrument creative. Because I'm so logical, it's hard to think of myself as creative. I am starting to explore that a little bit more. So when we first started dating, we would go month by month and ask if every month that we were dating, I would check in with Danielle and I would say, should we go for another? And so we're coming up on the year mark. Do you think we should go for another?
I think we should. What do you
All right,
think?
let's do it. I think we should too. Let's get into it. Let's get into the highlight reel for this week.
There was a little break from college basketball with the holidays. College basketball is back. We are going to highlight the NCAA basketball game, number 5 Texas at the time that they played versus number 9 Oklahoma. I have so many thoughts about this game. Rebecca Lobo was one of the commentators on this game, and her comments were killing me because I was like, what she's saying is what I'm feeling. We'll get into what I mean by this, but to start off, Texas won this game 80-73. Might have been the worst reffing we've seen to date.
I thought in 2025 we were going to be nicer to the refs, but it's not going to happen after this game.
I don't know how it could be possible when there are 54 fouls called in a single game.
I believe 29 of those fouls, if I'm remembering correctly, were called on Texas.
Now, if you do, let's round up to 55 divided by 5, which is fouling out, it would be 11 players fouling out. So both starting lineups plus a sub.
Yep.
That is not the case of what happened, but I'm just putting this into perspective of how many fouls that is. There were also monitor reviews that were taking forever. Rebecca Lobo shared a text on her social media that her daughter sent her during the game. And her daughter was just like, this game is never going to end because the amount of monitor reviews and how long they were taking. This game lasted 2.5 hours.
It was really not fun. We were watching, there was under a minute left, and I was like, this is going to take another 10 minutes. We have to go to bed. It's interesting. Both Texas and Oklahoma are new to the SEC, and the SEC is known to be very physical. I don't know what was happening with the refs. Also, I'm giving so many props to Rebecca Lobo to be an announcer and to just be like, screw it, I'm going hard and saying this is ridiculous. I thought that was pretty ballsy, and I loved it because everyone was thinking that at home. There was a little scuffle that happened underneath the basket. It should have been nothing.
And Rebecca kept saying, we're watching the replay in slow-mo. She's like, well, to me, it looks like a whole lot of nothing. But then the ref is sitting there watching, has the pencil out. And Rebecca's like, well, they got the pencil out. What are they writing down?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't know if people were going to get thrown out of the game. It was just madness.
It was madness.
My dad used to ref as like a side thing, and he always said, you don't notice good refs. If you notice a ref in a game, they're not a good ref. And I always remember that because it felt like these refs were making the game about them. I'm not saying that's intentionally what they were doing, but that's what it felt like watching this game because they were taking away from the game itself.
We stopped watching.
Yeah.
So that's not a good thing.
No.
To have people stop watching because they're so frustrated and it's taking way too long. So I hope after this game, there's some kind of meeting of the minds that happens that says in no universe are people committing 54 fouls. And let me tell you, this game was not rough. There was not even like a ton of trash talk going on. It was very tame. So I was like, what is happening? It was every time they came down the court, a foul was being called. It was very frustrating.
Very. But not to take too much away from the players, we had freshman Jordan Lee for Texas, who scored 17 points off the bench. I would say that's a pretty good day coming off the bench. And Rory Harmon, also from Texas, scored 16 points and added 8 assists along with that.
Texas looks good. I really like them. Madison Booker, surprise, surprise, got into foul trouble and so wasn't able to.
So many people.
Wasn't able to contribute in the same way. Rory Harmon is one of my favorite players to watch in the way that she handles the ball and the way that she plays defense. Her jumper that she does, maybe just outside of the paint, is really, really good. Goes in every time. For Oklahoma, Peyton Verhulst scored 23 points, and Reagan Beers, who transferred from Oregon State, got into early foul trouble, as did everyone. She scored 11 points in just 17 minutes of play. This win for Texas ended Oklahoma's 16-game home winning streak. I also just need to say, I always have a not-so-favorite team. Oklahoma may be it.
I have to watch them a little more before I can say that.
I don't want to be a hater. However, they are in the SEC, and there are some teams that I just like in the SEC. Texas being one of them. Obviously, South Carolina forever. LSU is another. And I do like Tennessee. So, yeah, Oklahoma's just not on the list. Sorry.
Yeah. With that, let's also talk about the PWHL.
Yes, we're going to get into the Minnesota Frost versus the New York Sirens, which happened this past Saturday. The Minnesota Frost came into this game 3-1, and they were sitting at the top of the table. The New York Sirens came in 2-2 and were sitting 4 in the table. However, coming into this game, Minnesota Frost forward Britta Curl was suspended for 1 game for a penalty committed against Boston on January 2nd. And I want to take a timeout here to get into this Boston game and also talk about Britta Curl. We've talked about Britta Curl before. She was drafted by the Minnesota Frost. She has had some interesting, and by interesting, I mean homophobic and racist social media activity. There was definitely some reaction to her being drafted. However, she is having a pretty solid rookie season. But let's get into this Boston game back on January 2nd. This game was absolutely bonkers. It went into overtime. This was the Frost versus Boston. To start, the Frost scored back-to-back goals 43 seconds apart. This game continued to go back and forth, and then the Boston Fleet forward Susanna Topany scored back-to-back goals just 49 seconds apart to tie the game and force overtime. So a very exciting, thrilling game that forced overtime for Minnesota and for Boston. But then Britta Curl scored in overtime to lead Minnesota to the win. During that game, Britta Curl received a penalty. After that penalty, it was reviewed and then got into a suspension. So we get into this game where the Frost take on the Sirens and Britta Curl is out. Then goalie Nicole Hensley for the Frost was also out after she got injured in warmups. And then a bunch of other Minnesota Frost players were out due to either injury or there's been a bug going around on the team.
That's brutal.
They're just getting hit with that viral bug
that
happens at this time of the year. So definitely coming into this game down. However, this was all New York. They won 5-0, got a shutout. Lucy Morgan ended up being the goalie for Minnesota because the backup goalie behind Nicole Hensley was also sick with that bug. She was just getting back. So they put Lucy Morgan in, who just recently signed a 10-day contract with Minnesota. So she was just added to the team. So I was watching this game and she has a Minnesota Gopher helmet on, like the college. And I'm texting our resident expert hockey friend, Maria, and I'm like, what is going on? How is she even allowed to wear a Minnesota Gopher helmet? And I'm like, maybe because it's Minnesota Frost, they kind of support it. She was like, no, she just signed a 10-day contract.
Oh my God.
And this poor goalie gets 5 goals scored against her. I am told, I do not have the hockey knowledge. I am told that not all the goals were her fault and a lot of them fell on the defense. But that's a rough way to start your career, to come in, not think you're going to play. Goalie Nicole Hensley gets injured during warmups and then you're just thrown into the mix and like, good luck.
And not even practicing with the team for a long time.
I know.
There's just so many things that could break down with that situation.
I bet it was stressful on the defense. They know that their goalie's not in. Maybe there's some pressing there and then things get left behind, and New York took advantage of it. Jessie Eldridge scored first for New York. She had 2 assists in this game. Rookie Sarah Fillier scored the second goal. Alex Carpenter scored a goal and had an assist. There was another score by Chloe Aurore, and then Abby Rock had a goal and an assist. Goals all around for New York. Do you know that hockey players play in 30 to 60 second bursts?
I didn't necessarily know that specifically, but also it makes sense based on how crazy hockey subbing is. When you say that out loud, I'm like, oh, I can see that now.
For people who know hockey, they're going to be like, yeah, you dummies. But for people who don't, hockey has lines that they put in. So they have a first line, a second line, maybe potentially a third line. And they rotate those lines in every 30 to 60 seconds. I knew that there were lines in hockey where they just kind of like sub out, people are flying over the boards. I did not know it was like a hit workout where it was like you have 30 to 60 seconds, you come out, you take a rest, and you go back in and you get out there. That totally changes the dynamic of what I thought the game is. It's not so much, I mean, there is obviously an endurance piece because it's like 30 on, 30 off, 60 on, 60 off, but that just cranks up the intensity to 100.
It's nothing like soccer where once you sub out, you're done. It's constant subbing. That must be really hard to defend as well. I feel like it's constant chaos on the rink.
Like who's coming in? Where's the nearest body? I would have to imagine that the muscles they use are also so different. What are those called? Fast twitch muscles?
Yeah, it's probably like a sprinter, similar to that.
So cool. The Sirens post their first shutout of the season, and I have been really getting into these PWHL games and really loving, 1, learning more about the sport, and 2, seeing these women play and get physical.
I'm very much looking forward to the PWHL takeover in Denver.
Oh yeah. Well, don't talk about it. Don't talk about it yet.
I won't
start looking
too much, but I'm just saying, watching on TV is one thing, but to be able to watch these women in person, I'm really excited for.
Okay, for our deep dive discussion today, if you are on social media at all, you know that 2025 is all about what's in and what's out.
I need to know who started this trend. I just started seeing it everywhere. I was like, wait, how did we get here? I don't even know where this started.
I do like it though, because it's very clear, concise. We're going to try our best to be clear and concise, although that's not normally my jam. But we're going to do a Women's Sports Weekly, what's in and what's out for 2025. We'll go back and forth, and let's start with what's in. There's going to be an NWSL team in Denver. That NWSL team in Denver is so in. They're not coming till 2026, but Denver has been awarded the 16th franchise in the National Women's Soccer League for a record $110 million. This is from a report from Sportico. Again, I won't feel good until I am at the first game ever in Denver, until this is actually going through. But that's what the reports are. This expansion fee is more than double the previous NWSL record. It will also be the largest ever paid for a U.S. women's professional sports team.
Finally, someone in Denver with money.
Thank you.
Has a brain and wants to invest in women's sports. I am so excited about this. Can't wait till they announce where they'll play and all that good stuff.
There are talks that there's going to be a specific stadium for them.
That would be incredible.
I'll just lose my mind.
Yeah, in a good way.
In the best way. And I'm also so excited. Like, Denver is not the spot for celebs. We've seen celebs in New York. I haven't spent time in LA as an adult, but I know you see celebs in LA. We're going to have celebs here.
I hope so.
Celebs that I care about seeing. I'm not going to say I'm going to stalk them because I don't want to scare them, but I'll be stalking them.
With that, I will talk about what's out. The lower the rims conversation is so out in 2025.
I just picture SpongeBob, hands on hips, lower the rims.
No. I just can't stand when people even bring that up in conversation. Let's take that out of 2025.
It's not relevant anymore.
No.
It doesn't make sense. We have people spending so much money to get women's sports leagues. We have so many people watching. We have college games outperforming NBA games. You can't have that conversation anymore. It is tired and it's not true. What's in? Halftime performances.
Tell me more.
I know we don't talk about men's sports on this podcast, and I'm not going to, but that Beyonce bowl.
So good.
I think her price tag is hefty. I think Netflix dropped some bags, as the kids say. We need more celebs, and we need more halftime performances. You know, people tuned into that football game because of Beyonce, and I don't think we necessarily need it in women's sports, but it's fun.
It adds in a fun layer.
It's so fun. And if we can get more people to watch through that, then let's do it. And why wouldn't you want to? I mean, we've seen Megan Thee Stallion interact with WNBA players. I think she likes them quite a bit. Let's get some more big names to not only show up to these games, but to perform as well.
I agree.
What's out?
Announcers commenting on how a player looks.
I added this to the list, and I say that knowing full well that we talk about how people look quite a bit.
Yes, I know we do. And it makes me, when I think about it, I was like, oh, we got to stop that too.
I don't know if I'm necessarily going to stop because I'm not creepy.
We just said it's out, so you have to stop.
But what if their style is so good?
We can talk about style. There's a difference between talking about style and talking about someone's general appearance.
Look, that's right. We have heard an announcer before call Iowa's Lucy Olson. She's got that girl next door look.
But don't be confused because she's an assassin. And it was creepy.
It was weird. It might not sound weird right now, but the way he was saying it, I was like, this is strange and we need to stop doing this.
And meanwhile, she was having a great game, and that's what you have to say about that.
Yeah.
So just things like that are out.
For sure.
What's in?
Pronouncing people's names correctly is so in.
Yes.
We've gotten corrections from Kiki Iriafin from now USC. She was at Stanford. We've gotten corrections from Brianna Stewart. She is not Brianna Stewart. She is Brianna Stewart. And most recently, we've gotten corrections from Mylasia Fulwiley, not Malaysia, Mylasia Fulwiley at South Carolina. It's the least we can do to look up people's names and pronounce their names correctly. We've learned hard names in the past. If we can do it with men, we can do it with women. What is out?
Next, we have going to bars where you need to beg to put a women's game on. So over it. More women's sports bars are popping up. So why are we going to bars that won't give you the time of day?
The WNBA club in Denver has done this really amazing thing where they're inviting bars to take a pledge to play at least 50% of women's games on their TVs and to play with sound.
And if someone were to ask them to play a specific game, they're also pledging to play that game, which I love.
And I think it's so incredibly important. We have talked about this many times on the podcast that it has been very difficult at some places to get them to play a game. Having having to beg to put on a women's game is very out, which takes me right into what is in. And what is in are women's sports bars. And most importantly, the 99ers Sports Bar here in Denver, which has recently opened. It is doing incredibly well. There's people in there all the time. I have my 99ers t-shirt on today. If you have the chance to go to a women's sports bar, if you are traveling to a city with a women's sports bar, please go and support. Very in for 2025. What is out?
Giving trolls attention. So we're always going to have our trolls on social media. I know I'm guilty of giving them attention because
Same.
it just drives me insane. Don't want to give these people attention. They don't deserve it. Done with it.
Okay, this is going to be a hard one for me to give up.
I mean, same, but I'm going to try.
The only thing that I will also add is that they're probably bots. They're probably not even real people. So we really shouldn't be giving them any attention because they're not even human. I know some of them are real, but some of them are not. And so, yeah, they don't deserve our attention.
Yes. What's in?
Feeling your feelings is in 2025.
I got to work on that.
I know that the start of the year can be rough. I think if everyone felt their feelings just a little bit more, this world would be a nicer place. I know it's not directly related to sports, but when we talk about trolls, man, if they just did a little bit of self-reflection and felt whatever that underlying feeling was, I think we would all be better off.
Yeah.
What is out?
Pay disparity. Pay women what they deserve.
We posted on our Instagram this past week a visual of what the top men's professional athletes get paid and what top women's professional athletes get paid. And it is a scary visual to see how big of a gap there is.
Yeah.
People are going to say that they draw more people. What we're finding more and more is that there were structural things in place that did not allow women's games to be shown, that did not highlight women. We are now seeing a push behind women's sports and we are seeing it pay off. So the pay that all of these media companies are about to be making needs to filter down to the people who are actually playing.
For sure. What's in?
Oh, you know what's in. Ellie the Elephant is still very in 2025. Female mascots, female coded mascots that look like, to a point, because they're a mascot, look like the people who are attending the games in some ways, who are so unapologetically themselves. We need more Ellie. We need more twerking. We need more of her at a halftime performance. It is amazing to have her in the WNBA.
Yes. Love Ellie.
So with that, what's out?
Justin Timberlake and other people using Ellie the Elephant to rehab their reputation. I don't actually know much about this, if I'm being completely honest.
We had one of our listeners reach out and say this as well, and I totally agree. It's been all over the internet. So Justin Timberlake has been having a rough time, got a DUI, was caught not being completely faithful to his wife, and he took it upon himself to shoot some videos with Ellie the Elephant. And it was just very clear that he was using Ellie the Elephant's clout to increase his own.
Wow. I somehow missed this.
It was a little cringy. And this comes from someone who's gone to a Justin Timberlake concert before.
Yeah, you have.
So I'm not a huge Justin Timberlake hater, but I was like, are we really just using Ellie now to make ourselves look better? It's a move.
It is a move.
It's a PR move, but it's out for 2025.
What's in?
Taking time off to watch women's sports is in. I want more people putting in PTO to take off and watch women's sports. And I know that comes from a place of privilege to be able to do that. But if you have the ability to do it, I want you to do it this year. I have a cousin who's very big into men's March Madness. Every year, he takes 2 days off for the first 2 days of March Madness. He invites all of his friends over. They all bring food. I think they sleep there. And they watch games all day and all night. And I want to recreate that this year, probably at the 99ers. I won't be sleeping there unless they let me. I want to take more time off to go see women play.
Love it.
What is out?
Homophobic and racist social media activity. I mean, people, bare minimum.
Bare minimum. And all we have been talking about, like in the past 5 episodes, and we even talked about it in today's episode, is someone went on and posted, liked, commented on something racist or homophobic. Can we just stop? It's out in 2025. Your social media activity that is racist and homophobic is out in 2025.
For sure. Those are our in and outs. If you all, our listeners, have any others within this realm of women's sports that you would like to share with us, please send them our way. We'd love to hear more.
Yeah, and even if it's not in the realm, if it's more like feel your feelings type stuff,
True.
We'll take it. What are you looking forward to this week, Danielle?
There are a ton of top 25 matchups in NCAA basketball, so I'm going to share a few. USC versus Maryland on Wednesday, January 8th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1. Then on Thursday, January 9th, there's Duke versus North Carolina at 7 p.m. Eastern on ACC Network.
Rivals and top 25 matchup.
Yes. Lastly, on Sunday, January 12th, Texas will play South Carolina at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. So a ton of great games coming up.
And we're going to have to be in two places at once because what I'm looking forward to is Sunday, January 12th, the Minnesota Frost take on the Montreal Victoire at 3 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube. So the Texas game is at 1 p.m. Eastern time. The Minnesota Frost Montreal game is at 3 p.m. and we will be at that game live because it will be played in Denver for the PWHL Takeover Tour. My lovely wife sitting right across from me got me a Montreal Victoire t-shirt for Christmas. And so I will be there in my new Montreal t-shirt, which just has the coolest logo. And I will be cheering for them hard because I'm definitely not cheering for Minnesota.
Love it. That's it for this week. We will see you next week on Women's Sports Weekly. In the meantime, watch women's sports, rate and subscribe to the pod on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Share the podcast with your friends. Keep sending us topics you want us to cover on Instagram at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Thanks for joining us.